The Dark Lord's spear shattered as it pierced the heart of our god.
Let's say your existence is only made up of fulfilling tasks for everyone else. There's a part of you that might enjoy the simple structure, but there's a side of you that desires the freedom to explore and be yourself. This is Devilian, a game that puts you in a role of a half-human and half-devil. An interesting dichotomy. G.K. Chesterton's Father Brown said it best: I am a man and therefore have all devils in my heart. To be human, selfish, greedy, and hateful with inconsistent patterns of benevolence, and to be devil, the absolute embodiment of evil. It's an interesting premise and one that isn't explored at all. Trial Worlds can't even tease us with this premise on its Steam page. Instead, we're forced to look at what you could do in the game, and unfortunately, there isn't much to boast about. You choose one of 4 character classes: Evoker, Berserker, Shadow Dancer, or Cannoneer. You dress them up in a few limited ways and start your adventure. You're awakened by some important girl who needs the help of Devilians, the last guardians of El Kenya. She wants to stop a god from destroying the world. Once you're awakened, you go from person to person, completing mission objectives in the most mundane way. The cycle sounds something like this. Talk to a person. Start the mission, which can be kill these baddies, observe those dead bodies, destroy those rocks, or seal this altar. Then run back to the person, collect your reward, and restart the loop as a side quest or mission. It's a great game if you play it as if you're reading a book before bed. There's a unique mechanic that makes matters worse: auto running. Click the button and you'll automatically run to the location the mission has you going to. I'm not running in any of these instances you're watching. The game is doing it all for me. It's brilliant, but detrimental. On one hand, I can fiddle with my inventory or prevent carpal tunnel. On the other hand, it's a moment I mentally disconnect from the game. Games like Borderlands and Guild Wars 2 have similar loops, but successfully drench them in other inspired quirks. Devilian's lack of masking presents a boring mission structure that can only be tolerated by MMO diehards. Combat suffers from a similar problem, but thankfully you have some control over how interesting combat becomes. Essentially, every character has 4 attacks and 3 different skill trees to choose from, and like Borderlands, you can place your skill points wherever you like. But unlike Borderlands, each skill tree gives you 6 additional moves. However, you only need about 5 moves to be successful in Devilian. Enemies are rarely a threat. Only a group of 10 or more constitutes the need to reach for health potions. Otherwise, when you're idle, you restore health. And it's a weird inclusion because the game gives potions extremely frequently. You also have an extremely powerful devil form. After killing a certain number of enemies, a meter fills up. Once that meter reaches halfway, you can turn into your devil form and wreak havoc. This form has its own set of moves and is leveled independently from your human form. Mechanically, it's still button mashing and doesn't seem necessary, but it's an interesting system. It would be nice to remain in devil form longer, but the trade-off is it also makes everything that much easier. The most challenging aspect of the game is balancing the power meter. I spent most of my time as the Berserker, and his rage meter fills up with his standard attack. When I have enough rage, I can use attacks that use rage. But when I'm not in battle, the rage meter depletes fairly quickly, forcing me to use my basic attack to refill the meter. I was caught so many times with an empty meter, but again, enemies don't pose too much of a threat. For the sake of personal amusement, you can reset your skill points as often as you like and play with skills from other trees, but generally, once you find a combination of moves you like, there's little need to switch. But there is comfort in knowing how you want to proceed in battle, because when you reach the dungeons, it's not a good time to think a lot. Devilian's dungeons are the excitement in the mundane. The early dungeons are straightforward, but become complex. They force you to think how you're going to combine your moves. It's also nice how you can match up with others online because dungeons are not easy to beat by yourself. Bosses are exceptionally challenging as well, mostly because they're sponges, but it's a spectacle to watch all of the attacks go off. But while my computer can handle the graphics, there were occasional moments the frame rate would hitch. Otherwise, the game performed wonderfully on my i5 8GB of RAM 660 Ti with all settings maxed out. Not that it's a visually stunning masterpiece anyway. The problem with dungeons is that they're too spread out. In the close to 20 hours I played, I guesstimate a dungeon every 2 hours. At one point, I didn't enter a dungeon for 6 hours. That was brutal. Once you hit around level 25, dungeons become frequent. There's also the Abyssal Tower, which is a mode where you climb 10 floors by beating a number of enemies on each floor. The last floor being a dungeon-like boss you fight alone. It's a great place to level up and the best parts of Devilian in one spot. Another great part of Devilian is Talismans. These are basically trading cards that boost your character stats. Any talisman you don't want, you can combine with a talisman you do want and level it up. It's a great tool and became one of my favorite aspects of the game. It allows you to create a unique character. Want a Devilian that specializes in health, defense, or strength? Fortify them with talismans. Engaging in the PvP includes other online Devilians. It's no different than seeing other players running around in Guild Wars 2, but when you're not engaging in tough bosses together, it can get annoying. Let's say you have to kill a mini-boss. If player A gets the attention of the mini-boss first, it doesn't matter if you kill it, player A gets the credit. It's distinctly not like Guild Wars 2. And player A has no idea what your missions are, they just happen to shoot it first. Which leads me to the most irritating aspect of Devilian. The character I chose, the Berserker. This game isn't anti-Berserker or melee, but it is evidently pro-Cannoneer and Evoker. Let's start with the PvP. There's 3 versus 3, and there's 20 versus 20. Both fun, but if you're not using a ranged character, or a character that has good range a la the Berserker, you're screwed. The Cannoneer, for example, has close range, area of effect damage, and long range. You can't get in close, and you're supposed to get in close. It's no different with bosses or the rest of PvE. Long range characters have a huge advantage. I figured out how to compensate for my character's huge weakness, but there's hardly any hope in PvP. Even if you needed to play aggressively, you can't. Hop into a match and you'll find more than half of either team is a Cannoneer or an Evoker. That's a problem the developer has to rectify quickly. Now, I've gone through the entire review and haven't mentioned the free-to-play. It doesn't matter. All of the items have to do with PvE except one which hardly affects PvP. Everything else is experience boosts, cosmetics, or currency boosts. At no point was I tempted to buy anything in the store, nor was I prompted or encouraged to. In fact, if you turn the game on and let me play from the title screen, I would never know it's free to play. Leveling feels completely normal. That's where I can appreciate Devilian. It's a full game in a free-to-play package without any pressure or need to engage the marketplace. It's a big game too, but it's woefully repetitive. Each mission makes you want to play dungeons even more. And you can forget the story, that's a horribly translated mess. If you're okay with auto-running through mission after mission, Devilian will pleasantly fill your time. Otherwise, Devilian doesn't offer anything fresh enough to warrant stepping away from your favorite ARPG or MMO. Devilian gets a 6 out of 10. Don't forget to subscribe to the Game Watcher YouTube channel, like on Facebook, and follow on Twitter.